my mic's not on yet, I don't think. Oh, there it went. Sorry. It took it a minute. This morning we're starting a new series. And by the way, real quickly before I get into that, we did our last bucket offering last week. I think it was almost $800 come in on that one. So it'll be in the service this morning. I'll give an announcement. But we're about 4157, I think, something like that for our total right now. Still may have some come in before that, but we will be able to buy more than our standard meals, several boxes. So really excited about that, and the sign-up sheets are going to be out this morning to start signing up for that. So we'll be giving an announcement in the service about that. But thanks for everybody's help. That was to the church. I think it's the easiest, isn't it? Make First Baptist Church.
Yeah, and or put it on an envelope, put RAH, so they know it's designated for that fund.
Yeah, you can either write out Rise Against Hunger or RAH, either one, and they'll make sure it goes to the right place. Or put an offering plate. Okay. And it passes. Yep.
So can you remind us of that date?
April 4th, first Saturday in April, and it's from 10 to 12. And we'll need a few people to be there about an hour early to help set up tables like we did last year and get the boxes set with food in them and that sort of thing. So last year I think we had a pretty good staff in there helping us get all the tables arranged, and we had the tables arranged, getting all the boxes filled, because you put the rice and everything in the boxes so we can start working and everybody keep those things filled. So it's a lot of fun. If you weren't able to come last year, we had a blast. I've heard more people laughing while we were doing that. The hair nets, the beard nets, it was comical, but we got a lot of work done. We packaged 10,150 meals in 45 minutes, I think, when we got started. We literally people running from table to table trying to get stuff, keeping stuff going. So the lady said, "I've never seen anything like this." She said, "You'll fly." So we're going to try to do more meals this year. Hopefully it'll turn into a competition again. I know the tables got to compete with each other up front, and that's what caused everything else downstream to start. And Scott broke his scales right off the bat. Told me he wasn't supposed to sit on them, but I think he did that to get out of weighing on his stuff. So we'll have more information and certainly more before the date.
Each box costs about $74, so to increase it, it's per box.
Yeah.
So for each $74 or $75, we can add into the box to our total.
Yes. And I can't remember. Do you remember how many meals are in each box?
I think there was like 50 in a box.
Okay. Somewhere around that, wasn't it?
We did 1,700 bags, and in each bag was 6 meals.
Yeah. And that's pretty amazing. I mean, you think about it, 1,700 bags in 45 minutes of food, measured out exactly how much needed to go in each bag, was amazing, because there's 5 items, I think, went in each bag to make that a meal. It's pretty amazing that it went through. The lady that come and did it, they're very organized. So, I mean, it's very well laid out of how to do it, and they do a good job with instructions on what to do and stuff. So it was a lot of fun. So I hope you can mark that day to come that morning. It's just a few hours on a Saturday morning to come and do something that feeds a lot of people. A lot of kids and a lot of adults get to have a meal because of this. So this morning we start a new series of lessons, and the kind of focus we're going to be looking at on this series is the vocabulary. So think about, as we do this, do we sometimes as Christians cause confusion with non-Christians by using church words? I think we do it a lot. And it's not that we intend to do it. It's just we use them a lot at church. So it's easy to, when you go outside of church, you just use the same vocabulary a lot of times. And most people are not going to say, "I didn't understand what you said." They're just going, even if they didn't get it at all of what you said and what you were describing going on at church. And it's funny, and funny in a bad kind of way, I guess. Linda had shared with me, it's been a few years ago now, they were teaching in Act Teens and had a young lady, they were talking about sacrifice and what, talking about the sacrifices in the Old Testament, what it meant and stuff like that. And one of the girls said, I don't know what that means. And had no idea what they were talking about. And it's just one of the things you just use so frequently when you're in God's Word and stuff. Sometimes you just assume everybody in church knows, but that's not the case. Yeah, atonement, yeah. So there's a lot of times, the words we use, even though someone's in church, doesn't mean they were raised in church. And if you weren't raised in church, sometimes you may not know these words, and it's easy to confuse people. So, it's kind of the focus as we look at these next few lessons is to look at some of the terms we use and break them down not only for us, but so we can make sure we understand enough to break those terms down for people who aren't necessarily in church or have been raised in church. So it's kind of funny. I did a search on the internet looking for words that has changed. Their meanings have changed over the years a lot, and I'll say to the point of being completely opposite. So I won't throw some of these out because these kind of caught me off guard. Awful. What does awful mean?
Not good.
Not good. Something bad. That's not what it was used originally. The term awful was to talk about someone who is awe-inspiring. So it was a good thing. It's talking about you're in awe of them. They're someone that deserves that. How about nice? No, this one was actually not. It was actually a term used to describe someone who is silly or foolish. And I'm sitting there thinking, really? And it gives examples. You can Google these things. Guy, just guy, Guy. And I thought, okay, how can that be bad? Well, it's based on a person's name whose first name was Guy that did some really bad things in Parliament and tried to blow up Parliament back in the 1800s. And so the term because his name was Guy, if you were a guy, you were someone that was doing bad things. You were a criminal type person. Bachelor, I thought was interesting. We all know what a bachelor is. And when we think about it, it kind of makes sense on the other one. The definition, actually the reason bachelor was put in place was to talk about the lowest degree you can get at a university, which is still today a bachelor's degree, or BS or BA, either one. But usually when we hear someone talk about bachelor, unless they're specifically talking about school, we think of a single man. Naughty, I thought was interesting. Any guess on what naughty would have been started off being? Think Jethro Bodine. Zeros. Double not spy. Jethro double not spy. That's what it meant. Someone who had nothing. You were naughty. You had not. And I thought, wow, I've never heard that way before. I've been called naughty, but it wasn't in that term. I didn't have anything, but that wasn't the reason they would call me that. And of course, everybody knows, now term like, what's some terms we hear today that people use that used to would have meant something different. Kids use. Lit. Cool. Yeah. It's funny because I've read some of these and I'm thinking, okay, I'm really out of touch. I didn't realize how out of touch I was.
That's a Wednesday night question.
Yes, yeah, those kids could rattle these things off. Yeah, well, I figured some of y'all still got kids and that are throwing these terms out there every day.
They're not cool
Okay.
anymore.
Yeah. That's like Facebook. When all the old people get on Facebook, the kids are like, oh my gosh, it's terrible. They got something else, and now we can't find them again. One of them I thought was sick. You hear people say, oh, that's sick. I'm like, who's sick? No. It's or in our day, it's bad. That's bad. That was good. When did we turn these things around? Why did we do that? So we got to figure these things out. And they talk about the English language is one of the most difficult languages to learn because of things like this. And the definitions changing so much of words, and the words could have so many different meanings. We've got all kinds of homonyms that's used where we have words that are spelled or pronounced the same that have different meanings. If you talk about someone, a bass, are they talking about a bass guitar? Are they talking about the bass of a lamp? If someone talking about plane. Well, you talk about somebody who's dressed plain. You're talking about somebody getting on a plane. There's a lot of different ways we can use our words, and sometimes we can cause confusion, even on basic words. You have to take it in context with what someone's talking about, and for churches, that's very important. If anywhere we want to be clear, we want to be clear in church, don't we? We're talking about something that can change someone's life for eternity. And we want to be very clear. We want people to understand exactly what we're talking about, so there's no confusion and no somebody having to say to them, what did they mean by that? And it's hard for us because we don't think about it many times. We just assume everybody knows. And so that's kind of what we're looking at over the next little bit, is trying to understand what these terms mean to us, and how can we explain these terms to others that will help make sense of why we're Christians. What does it mean to be a Christian? And it's so important we get into this. Now, this morning we're in Isaiah this morning, looking at the prophecies. And it's kind of interesting. I didn't realize till I did some reading this week. I'd heard this before, but I had forgotten it. That Isaiah is actually split up in three sections, and it's thought that Isaiah didn't write the whole book. Isaiah wrote the first 39 chapters, they're pretty certain. But after that, it's kind of broken up into at least a couple different authors, and maybe more, as the book was completed. And it's broken up. You got the first 39 verses that was proto-Isaiah. And that's where he's talking about you had the Babylonian moved in, and they were exiled, and it's a lot of correction. So a lot of, if you look at those first 39 chapters in Isaiah, it's a lot talking about the correction, what they need to do, what they've done wrong, and what's going on in that point in history. And then it switches to what they call Deutero Isaiah, which is 4, and that's more of the encouragement. And that's where we're going to focus today. It's talking about who is God. Why would they need to know who is God? I mean, he's talking to people who were the church in many of these things. Why would they need to know who's God? It's easy to get confused, wasn't it? Do we ever need to be reminded of things?
Be reminded sometimes to let us remind us of who's in charge.
Exactly. It's easy to forget that, isn't it? We get caught up in the world, we get busy, and sometimes we forget that God is in control still yet, especially when things are going bad. And they had lived through a pretty rough time. And there was a lot of false gods entered into their lives, and they had a lot of confusion this time. And sometimes we need to be reminded today who God is, and that God is the one true God. Do we have idols today? Yeah. You don't have to have a golden engraved image in your house. If you did, somebody probably break and steal it and go melt it down. But you don't have to have something like that in your house that you sit down and worship every day for it to be an idol, does it? Money can be an idol for us. Money can distract us from God. Cars can do it. Of our relationship with God. And anything that does that is acting as an idol. It's causing us to be distracted from our goal. And our goal is to worship God. It's very difficult for us to stay on target many times, though, because we got so many things that pull us away from that. So Isaiah actually prophesied through 4 kings. He had King Uzziah, King Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, and then King Manasseh. King Manasseh was the last one that he was with, and Isaiah was actually martyred during Manasseh's reign. He was a very evil king, and he was actually martyred during that time. And you can look it up sometime, but it's a very unpleasant way to go. He was sawed in half. I can't remember the saying. They talk about something about having evil on your lips or something like that. And I can't remember. I looked it up earlier and I forgot the saying. I wish I'd wrote it down. But that came from him being sawed in half. When the saw actually made it to his lips, he had proclaimed God at the very end, and then died shortly after that. But yeah, I'm thinking, that's a bad way to go right there. I mean, any of the torture back in those days was not a good way, but whew, I thought that's kind of gross, actually. So let's go ahead and get into this. And we do start in verse 40, or chapter 40, And this is where we get into seeing more who is God, and trying to explain to them again, to remind them. So verse 25 says, "To whom will you compare me, or who is my equal?" asked the Holy One. "Look up and see who created these. He brings out the stars by number. He calls them by name, calls all of them by name, because his great power and strength. Not one of them is missing." Uh, Do we forget sometime that God put all this in motion? I don't think about it a lot. I love to go out and look at the stars. And when I do, it's usually when it hits me. I'll sit there and look at that and I'll say, oh my gosh, think about what God has put here for us. And He still knows who I am. And He knows my need. He knows your needs. He knows the hairs on our head. Now, for some of us, that's easier to count than it used to be. I'm not saying any names. But he knows us. He knows down to everything about us. He knows us better than we know ourselves. Yet He created everything. He is the God of everything that put this together. And I think we need to be reminded sometimes how powerful God is. Do we put God in a box a lot of times when we pray even? We pray within the boundaries we know, don't we? A lot of times, God, can you do this? I need this done. When God's saying, I can do this. Ask me for this. And that's what He wants to give us. He wants to give us far above what we think we need. He wants to give us more. He tells us, He wants us to have life and have it in abundance. And we are so caught up in the things that we see and the things of the world that we put God in the same constraints that we understand. We can fathom these kind of things. We can't fathom this. It's beyond us. And sometimes we just need to stop and look around and see what God has put around us, the timing of everything. It's interesting. I know Dickie had taught youth back, it's been a couple of years ago now, right? About the science and God. And it's interesting when you start thinking about how well you can time everything. We've got our calendars set for years in advance. We know when the sun's going to come up, what time sunrise and what time sunset's going to be. And God placed all that there and put it in motion in such finite thoughts that we can do that. It's not because it just happened. Things like this don't just happen. You don't have what was said. Chaos never brings order, right? That's true. It doesn't. God brought this in place for us, and I think it's a good reminder when we look around and see all this. But when we see the evil happening in the world, is it hard to defend sometimes that God is truly God? It's difficult.
It raises the question a lot of times for people, the question of why.
Yes.
And in this world, because we forget that while we're in this world, we're going to have free will, we're going to have choice, and Satan has the ability to tempt us into bad decisions.
And of course, we always know the answer. Tell somebody when they ask us that, right? and we don't. Obviously, being very facetious. All we can say is exactly what you said. There's free will. There's things that we don't understand. We don't have the vision God does to understand that there's things around us.
For people to understand that somebody else's bad choice can affect us.
Absolutely.
We are a little more open to taking responsibility when it's our bad choice.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's somebody else's bad decision, that has the ripple effect that affects us. I think that's when we really question God and say, why?
Sure. Well, we love free will when it's our free will. Do we like free will when it's somebody else's free will that we don't like their thought process? It's like free speech, isn't it? Where, people's all about free speech unless they disagree with you, and it's like, well, you need to be quiet. That don't count for you because you got the wrong idea.